So he said, when in talking to him, he said, look, when you switch that, then you allow everybody to use soap after they go to the bathroom. You prevent transmission. You don't prevent transmission of bacteria. Super important, but you do prevent transmission of some other organisms. The soil transmitted helminths is HELMINTHS. So you're basically looking at intestinal worms, protozoa, things of that nature that we generally, unfortunately, have classified all as parasites. But those drop off. And I'm talking about David Barker because he's the one that really connected this with the appendix. But it was 1968 when this was really all figured out by a guy named Brian Greenwood. And then 1970, Peter John Preston was looking at the loss of these certain organisms and why people in Africa weren't having problems with autoimmune and allergic disease.
So it seems like what you're getting at here is that when we started using soaps of different kinds, those soaps disproportionately removed essentially larger organisms larger than bacteria, like protozoans, so single-celled eukaryotic cells, like these little tiny worms that are tiny to our eyes, but still much bigger than microbes, than single-celled bacteria and things like that. We've started with some of those. And I think what you're implying here is that similar to the gut microbiome that we normally think of as being beneficial or at least neutral bacteria, there are also other organisms, including little tiny worms, that are supposed to be in our guts, basically.
Yeah, they're supposed to be. And some of them aren't so little tiny, right? And some of them can be very painful. So it's sort of like a bacteria, right? The difference between a salmonella and a lactobacillus is pretty big in terms of, but they're both bacteria. So the same is true with worms. There are some worms nobody's ever heard of, but if you take care of animals on a farm, you're probably exposed to them a lot versus, if you live in a city. It was in the late 1800s when allergies first started showing up on the radar screen, and they thought there were a lot of ideas about what was causing hay fever, and they thought maybe education did it. And by the way, that's not true. That's not true. But they were trying to figure it out back then. You're looking at 150 years ago, trying to sort this stuff out, and they just didn't. Of course, at that time, they didn't understand that our immune system gets trained by its environment. So if you take away a whole swath of, and it's not just soap for us, it's it's living in houses that are clean, not being in contact with the soil. Everybody uses a toilet. So we have sewer treatment facilities. We don't walk around barefoot. And for a lot of these things get transmitted through intermediate hosts. So if we don't eat a lot of insects by accident, if insects and rodents can't get into our food supply, then we interrupt the chain a lot.
Right. So it's like a double-edged sword, hygiene and the modern environment we've created over time. On the one hand, we're less exposed to many infectious diseases that used to kill people and babies and stuff all the time. But on the other hand, we're also not exposed to the possibly beneficial or the neutral or the only mildly irritating bugs that are out there that are actually importantly involved in that training of the immune system early in life.
Yeah, it's sort of between. I think we wrote one paper about being between a hygienic hard place and a rock or something. Some that kind of analogy where you don't want cholera, memic dysentery, and typhoid, but if you don't have these organisms, then the rates of allergy, autoimmunity, and neuropsychiatric stuff, that's one of the big things we found while I was at Duke. Those kind of things will tend to go up and up and up.
Yeah. It's a trade-off. When did people first start getting appendicitis more? Was there a clear time that was happening?
Yeah, that was in the late 1800s. Yeah. And fortunately, at the same time people were getting appendicitis, we also got surgeons.